There's a lot of people who value freedom in the United States of America. I had, in August of 2020, when the pandemic just started and they were just doing the lockdowns and all the other stuff, I went to Germany and gave a speech in Berlin. And the estimates of the crowd there were 1.3 million. It was the most extraordinary crowd. It looked like Woodstock. There were people from all over Europe. People from the MC was a man from Ghana. We had Buddhist priests. We had Hare Krishna people. Good people from every kind of ideology, left, right, first time coming together and saying, you know, somebody is stealing our freedom, and this is something we all need to unite about. The crowd, again, they said 1.3 million people, and nobody was wearing a mask. That was, at that time, that was a kind of heresy. And there was an NBC crew from the United States there, and they were all masked up. And they said to me, why aren't you wearing a mask? Aren't you scared of COVID? And I said, there's things that I'm a lot more frightened about than COVID. He said, what is that? I said, that would be losing my constitutional rights and having my children grow up in America where they don't enjoy the kind of rights that I took for granted as a boy. And we saw during COVID this extraordinary thing happen to our country, where all of a sudden people, the capacity, the fear, the orchestrated fear, almost disabled the capacity for critical thought among so many Americans, people who we loved, people who were family members, people who we grew up with, and we all assumed shared the same value systems that we did. But all of a sudden they were okay with censorship, and the government began, going through the Constitution. They started out with the censorship, which they began very, very early. I started encountering it by the end of January of 2020. Things that I said would disappear from Instagram posts. And by the way, I'm accused of passing misinformation. But I would, misinformation, as we know, is just a euphemism for anything that departs from government orthodoxies, whether it's accuracy or inaccuracy in their nomenclature. And we know this because they acknowledge that in the Twitter files, and they acknowledge that in the emails that we now have between the government officials and Facebook, where Facebook is saying, well, you're asking us to censor things that are true, but that they may be dissenting against government policies, and they all agree that that's right. So we saw that, and the right of free expression, Hamilton, Madison, and Adams all said we put it in the First Amendment because all of the other rights are dependent on that. If a government has the capacity to silence its critics, it has license for any kind of atrocity. And that is what unfolded as soon as they found out that Americans would put up with constraints, with government-ordered constraints on free speech. They began this attack, this assault against all the other amendments, all the other rights in our Constitution. The second leg of the First Amendment is freedom of worship. They closed down every church in this country for a year, with no scientific citation, no due process, no notice and comment, public hearings, no environmental impact statement. And by the way, you can do things for emergency But you can still go through the democratic process. You could still have comment sections and public hearings and environmental impact statements. But none of that was even tried. I've spent 40 years suing companies and agencies for trying to subvert or shortcut the regulatory process, part of democracy. Now, there was a big question throughout our country's history about whether regulatory agencies were even constitutional because they were outside of the democratic process. You know, the Congress, yes, can pass laws. The Constitution says Congress can pass laws. The court said, okay, regulatory agencies can pass laws, which is outside of the Constitution, but you have to incorporate a regulatory process, and it has to be strong, which means you have to do you have to do a public notice. You publish what the law is going to say, so that everybody knows in the newspaper of records, in ways to calculate that every citizen who is affected by this new law will learn about it in advance. You give the public a period of comment. You do an environmental impact statement that outlines all of your scientific citations and all of the expert opinions that underlie it. You look at the cost-benefit analysis to every sector of society. You look at whether there's alternatives that can accomplish the same objective that are less burdensome to the public. These are all legal requirements, and then you have a 60 or 60 or 90 day comment period in which the public, every member of the public can comment, and all of those comments have to be responded to. Oh, for example, if there's a mass regulation, and you know, I own a kayak company, and I say to the government, I can't force my clients to put on masks because it could kill them in an emergency. That would be the kind of comment the government would say, okay, then we'll carve out something for outdoor sports or something like that. That's why that's why you have those comment periods. And none of that was done. And then you have an administrative finding that's published by the administrative judge. And then that's appealable. So the whole thing in a court, up to the Supreme Court. So it's all incorporated in the democratic process, but in this case, it was all forgotten. And we just had one bureaucrat who'd been 50 years in office and never been elected, who says one week put on masks, and the next week, or 1 week masks don't work, which he's saying in private and publicly, but privately he's advising his boss at HHS, oh, put it on, they don't work. Oh, you know, later he said, oh, I just said that to reduce the demand on masks. But he was telling that to his boss, you personally should not put on a mask because they don't work. So anyway, he's a 50-year bureaucrat who's never been elected, who then, mandates all these dictats for the American people, completely separated from the democratic process. So after they did religion, and they went after freedom of assembly, which is the third leg of the First Amendment. We were all told to social distance from each other. And then they go after property rights. They close 3.3 million businesses with no due process and no just compensation in violation of the Fifth Amendment. And then they go after jury trials. Oh, here's what the Seventh Amendment says. It says, no American shall be denied the right of a trial before a jury of his peers in cases or controversies exceeding $25. There is no pandemic exception. They didn't put that in the United States Constitution. And by the way, the framers knew all about epidemics. There were two epidemics during the Revolutionary War. One of them that decimated the malaria epidemic that decimated the armies of Virginia, and then a smallpox epidemic that actually took place in this state, Vermont and New Hampshire, with Benedict Arnold's armies that were on their way to Montreal. And they ended up taking Montreal, but having to leave because they didn't have the manpower to support the occupation. So Canada would have been part of the United States, but for that smallpox epidemic, arguably.